Thank you very much for having me, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here, be part of your speaker series for the first time. And it's great to see such a lively audience as well. Thank you for showing up today. So today, I'll talk about automated recruitment. And I know it can be scary sometimes, but we'll kind of dissect it down and talk about how automation can actually drive a lot of revenue. And this is not about cost reduction, but revenue. But before I get started, oftentimes, as Richard was alluding to, I always get asked, how did you end up in the Philippines? And how did you end up doing this? My journey started in Boston. I started 3 companies in Boston, a couple of which did well, and then moved out to San Francisco, became an investor, started investing in a lot of startups. But then I got to this, the classic quandary. Is this the meaning of life? Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And while San Francisco is great, it can also feel shallow sometimes. And I've always volunteered across my life. I've always wanted to help with poverty alleviation. And I decided to leave and go to Africa to volunteer with Grameen Foundation, which also does great work here. So I moved to Ghana. And the first project I worked on was a maternal health project. So we were helping really poor women living in rural areas how to have better pregnancies. So every week they would get a phone call, an automated phone call, which would give information to them such as, this is week 32 of your pregnancy, this is how you take care of your body, this is how that story that your grandma told you about X, Y, or Z is not true. And by working on that program, and it was a Gates-funded program, I saw the power of automated communications. And I saw that there really weren't great tools for inclusivity of communications. In developing countries, I'll talk about later, but 50 to 60% of people still have no internet. They still have feature phones. And often we exclude them from opportunities. They don't have the same opportunity. Somebody living on Camigan Island does not have the same opportunity as someone living in Metro Manila for a well-paying job. In order to get to a place where they can interview, they have to pay for lodging, etc. And so that's, living in Africa, I was thinking, how do we bring inclusiveness by leveraging communications? And that was the start of my journey. So moved to the Philippines, to Cebu 4.5 years ago with my co-founder, and we started building engageSPARK. So this technology was all built here. As we've been here for 4.5 years, we launched the platform, and now we have clients in over 120 countries. Clients like Convergys, Facebook, Google. They do different things. BSF, for example, we do farmer education across Africa. We've gotten great press. Forbes calls us a leading startup, and we've gotten great investors like 500 Startups, Kickstart here, Wavemaker in Singapore. But coming back to inclusivity, this is something that's really dear to my heart. Because I had some great opportunities growing up in the US, which I see that others don't, and I find it unfair. And so that's what I wanted to do, was work on that problem. So there are 100 million Filipinos, 80% of them are usually not online. About 60% of them don't have internet or data still. It's 2018, we just assume everybody does, but more than half people do not. That means that they typically have feature phones. Another 20% have smartphones, but they usually can't afford data plans most of the time. But the thing that's changing there, of course, is Facebook free basics. So they can get onto Facebook even though they can't afford a data plan. And then there's the rest of us. We're in that 20%. We have nice smartphones, and we have data pretty much all the time on our phones and at home. And as all of you think about expanding to next wave cities, you have to keep in mind that more and more of those people that you want to recruit are in that 60% and that 20%. They're less likely to have smartphones and data. And so that means that hiring must be inclusive. And so it's the platform we built. It's an automated communications and workflow platform. A lot of words. What that really means is that being able to interact with anyone who has any kind of phone, especially if they're on Facebook Messenger, or if they don't have a smartphone, interacting with them via automated phone calls or SMS text, Imagine being able to send loader data for an action they complete, such as if you, the morning of the interview that they're supposed to come in, send them 50 pesos of load as a expression of gratitude to make sure that they actually show up. And then email to notify the recruiters and the process, and then these other channels are coming this year. But really thinking about how do we interact with people across whatever kind of phone they have, and being inclusive in giving and allowing opportunities for those people who are ready to seize them. So this scenario happens once in a while. You get a client who says, all right, I want 2,000 new agents next month. And at first, your thought is, great, it's a lot of money. I'm going to meet my annual bonus. And then your second thought is, shit, how am I going to hire 2,000 people in a month? And so we get clients who come like that, and especially in third wave cities or future wave cities. And so really, how do we recruit across every island? How can we recruit across 7,000 islands? So you want the candidates who are qualified, but many of them have feature phones. And this applies not just in next wave cities, but also in Metro Manila or Cebu. I still see people in Cebu and here who may have a feature phone or more likely have a smartphone, but they still don't have data plans. They're just on Facebook free basics. So they may have a phone, but they don't have the money to come to your office to apply because they can't afford load to call somebody to apply or to even send a text, because often they just run out of load. They can't afford the transportation, buying a ferry ticket to get to the next island, the food and lodging to stay there, which all comes down to risk, because they're taking all this risk to come interview, especially if they already have a job. So they're going to take some days off from an existing job to come interview when they have no idea if they'll actually get the job. That's an enormous amount of risk. And therefore, that risk, that perceived risk, holds a lot of people back from seizing that opportunity and applying for a job, a well-paying job at a BPO. And so we look at recruitment automation as a funnel. And so if you need to hire 2,000 people, you have to cast a really wide net. And that means that, and all of you do this already, lots of stories on Facebook, posts from your team, your social media team goes into active mode, posting lots of things, or advertising on Facebook, or posting pictures on Instagram of how cool it is to work in your office, or having YouTube videos about your company values. And of course, advertising on MyNemo or JobStreet, having an employee referral program, which is usually the best way of gathering leads for applicants, or a website. Offline ads, I know many of you have billboards or taxi ads or posters. And online ads. So imagine all of those leads coming into one platform instead of dealing with all those people in different ways, and being able to qualify those candidates immediately. So imagine somebody applies on JobStreet, they click apply, that email comes into our platform, and within a minute, we call that person back on their phone number. And so now, that person feels special because they've been contacted right away, which is very unusual. And we can interview them right away in an automated fashion with things like, press 1 if you're able to move to Iloilo. Press 2 if you have a degree in nursing. Or speak how you would solve this problem with your customer. Or what do you know about Windows? Explain this problem with Windows. We record it, and then a recruitment person listens to that audio after the fact, or within a few minutes, and presses pass-fail workflow buttons. So being able to qualify immediately and being able to automate that entire interview process, sometimes it's multiple phone calls, and then also being able to do things to increase their onboarding rate or their show-up rates. Incentives like load or data plans to build gratitude or to remind them to show up. Little nudges to show up for the interview, and then also after they get the job to actually show up for the first day of work. And those are things that any of you could do those on your own. Is sending load or showing, as humans, when somebody shows us gratitude, we're much more likely to feel obligated to follow forward on what we said. And so when you cast a wide net to hire those 2,000 people, being the first to interview means you get an advantage, a competitive advantage. And a lot of times when we have a big goal of hiring a lot of people, we often compromise on quality of the applicants. I see a lot of heads nodding. We lower the bar because we have to meet that number, otherwise we won't get that client or we won't get the revenue from that client. And so it becomes a losing game because eventually those people are more likely to not perform well and they'll more likely to churn out. But by casting a wide net and being very agile to interview and being able to actually interview at scale, for example, a customer, they were able to pre-screen 2,000 candidates in 2 hours using automated phone calls. And handling those volume of leads and doing the call-outs often takes days. And so this way, being able to get a high quality of people and actually increasing the bar because you're able to pre-screen from a much, much wider range of candidates. But with automation, automation, as all of us speakers talk about, it's often looked at as a negative, but we see it as a huge positive because the recruitment team is now focused on the candidates that are qualified. So somebody told us, for example, one of our customers, that more than 50-60% of the people that they interview in the first interview are just not qualified. So imagine the amount of time that's wasted there meeting those people. And very importantly, imagine the amount of time that applicant has wasted and the money they wasted to come interview. And they could have been doing something else, they could have been staying at their job, or they could have saved that money for transportation, lodging, etc. And really valuing the applicant's time. I read something about how that 83% of people, when they have a bad first interview, they will never apply with that company ever again. And even if they're unqualified now, they might be qualified in 2 years. So you still want to have that great experience with them. And so automation for us is really about amplifying their teams, amplifying your recruitment teams to be able to cast a much wider net and focus on those people who are pre-screened and qualified, and being able to have more quality interviews, longer interviews, and spending more time to onboard people. So it's really about extending reach, amplifying the team. The employee referral program is something that is often looked at as the best way of hiring candidates. They tend to be high quality, the retention tends to be longer. But do you realize that a lot of people are now violating the new Data Privacy Act? You've heard all about it, but I think a lot of people have missed this part for the employee referral program. Today, the way most employee referral programs work is that the recruitment team asks for your employees' friends' phone numbers and names. But with the DPA, the law now is that consent must be obtained from those people before the recruitment team can collect the employees' friends' phone numbers and names, because that is personally identifiable information. So no longer, that's a practice that has been going on, it works really well, but it has now become illegal because of the DPA, because that friend did not give their consent before the BPO collected their information. And the fines are pretty stiff. It can be 1 to 3 years of jail time and a minimum of $500,000 pesos. Yeah, it's pretty stiff. And it's a pretty strong law. Of course, it's just being implemented. It only went into effect a few months ago, and organizations are still in the mode of registering all their processes. But at some point, the government will start cracking down, and they'll start making examples of companies. And so what we did there to solve this problem, because as we talked about this with customers. They kept telling us this is coming up. So imagine now that the employee, we send a message to all your employees once or twice a month to remind them to refer their employees. Then they forward that message via Messenger to their friends that are on Messenger, or their friends that are on Viber, or the friends that they have on WhatsApp, or the friends that they still have on feature phones who they forward that message via SMS. And then a friend, if they're on a smartphone, they click on a link on Messenger, or if that friend's on a feature phone, they get that via SMS and they forward that to one of our shortcodes. And as soon as they take that step, we can do knockout questions in Messenger, ask for their phone number in Messenger, and call them to get their recorded audio speech immediately. There's no lag time of somebody following up, chasing them multiple times, and asking them to come into the office, which they may or may not be able to do for days. So just moving this timeline of within minutes from initial contact. And then being able to hire, to meet that goal of 2,000, actually being able to do it so quickly, being able to meet that within a month. And the benefit here is we take care of all the tracking. It's fully automated. No more humans writing down and recording which employee referred whom, etc. And very importantly, imagine keeping the employee who referred in the loop, so they know every time that their friend is now supposed to come in for the interviews today. So now they can send a message to their friend saying, hey, make sure you show up for the interview. I've got 10,000 pesos riding on this. Or when when they accept the job offer and they show up for the first day of work, hey, make sure you show up because I've got 10,000 pesos riding on this. So as we all know, peer pressure can be very, very persuasive. And unfortunately, most employee referral programs don't keep the employee in the loop constantly. But by automating all that, it becomes easy to keep providing that peer pressure and providing the nudges to the friend. One of the great things, one of the things that we see that BPOs are often missing is they have huge marketing budgets, especially when they have to spike up to hire, say, 2,000 agents. But they often they cannot say that my cost to hire for agents from that Facebook ad was X dollars. Or the cost to hire from this billboard ad was Y dollars. Because imagine on a billboard having a call to action that says, text apply to this number, which then triggers the whole process. Because by automation drives trackability. And so that's the level of detail that automation can give you, is knowing which ad specifically. So if you're A/B testing 3 ads on Facebook, actually being able to know which ad drove conversion, and at some point being able to track retention. And so knowing that data and having that upfront and being able to see it all the time becomes really valuable in making these decisions around marketing. Because we often think of marketing budgets for recruitment as this big pool without direct accountability or visibility as to which ad drives how many hires. And we're gathering a lot of data now. So imagine the amount of recordings that we're getting on our platform of people speaking their answers to questions such as, who was your favorite teacher, or what would you do in this situation with a customer? And as we record that audio from their phone onto our servers, we're building a huge repository of that speech data. And we're starting to work on looking at that speech data to see, are there patterns on hiring? Just from their tone or their word choice, do they use smaller words, bigger words? How well do they pronounce all the words? What's their tone? Is it a confident tone or an unconfident tone? Can we predict whether they will meet the criteria, qualify, and be hired? So that's where this is heading. And then as some of our customers give us more data around, did they show up for the first day of job? Did they stick around for 6 months or a year? That's our real objective is to be able to correlate the initial interviews to retention, to be able to tell that the way that the applicant answers their questions, will they stick around for at least a year or 3 years? And that's the power of AI, being able to go through all that big data, listen to all those recordings that humans could never do, and being able to predict that. Whether will they join, are they qualified, will they join, and how long will they stick around? And this is something, and being able to even predict, will they succeed in that job if we're able to get their performance data. So I know I've gone through a lot of stuff, so I thought it might be a good time to actually try out what something like this looks like, what automated recruitment looks like. So if you don't mind, if you can grab your phones, and you can try either one or both. One is send a new SMS to this number. That's 2929. So try it, open up your SMS app. Or if you prefer, you can do Facebook to see what the Facebook experience is for those people who have smartphones. But you can open up Facebook or Facebook Messenger, search for applicant engage, and then just follow the bot. And either way, you'll get into an automated recruitment process. And just imagine being able to have thousands of people interview same day. Feature phone or smartphone, doesn't matter. It's really about inclusivity, no matter where they live, as long as they have the qualifications, are they enabled to compete for these jobs? And to me, circling back from where I started, so engageSPARK is a not-for-profit business. So it's not to enrich their shareholders or to enrich me. It's really about how do we make a difference in this world? How do we create more good jobs in the world? And how do we provide access to those jobs for those people who least have them just because of the lottery of birth? They didn't choose to be born in a small island, but they should have the same access as somebody who was born in Metro Manila. So yeah, please try this out. You can do it now or you can do it later. And we'd love to get more feedback. But our goal is to amplify your recruitment team and give opportunities to anybody, anywhere. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. Have a good day.